ලසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
Tonight, your guess is as good as any. D-Day beckons on Friday as the President calls for a crucial meeting on interim government plans. Throwing the book, the Kegalle magistrate orders the arrest of all police personnel involved in the Rambukkana shooting incident. A stitch in time, the World Bank's confirmation of a $600 million emergency package perks up the public and the stock market as well. At long last, as Ceylon cinnamon takes ownership of its identity, the EU ambassador predicts it becoming the champagne of spices.
So what we need is to give a much better branding for Sri Lanka. It shouldn't be about either tsunami or civil war or Easter bomb attacks. It has to be about the best cinnamon in the world, the best ambili in the world, the best pineapple in the world.
All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 27th of April, 2022.
Lifebuoy shampoo cuti rupiah 70යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. This is your primetime English news bulletin on AdaDerana 24 and I'm Indiveri Amwath. In your top story, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that he agrees in principle on the formation of an all-party interim government as a solution to the crisis facing the country. The President has informed this in writing to leaders of the ruling party and independent groups. However, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today denied claims that he has been asked to resign by the President. In the meantime, a meeting was called for between the President and ruling party leaders to discuss the way forward in this regard.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, in a letter addressed to all party leaders within the ruling party, has expressed his willingness on principle to form an all-party government consisting of members of all parties in Parliament. The President's comments come in the face of requests made to him by the chief prelates of the three Buddhist sects in the country, as well as the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, to do so as a solution to the current social and economic crisis. Accordingly, the President has convened a special discussion at the President's house on Friday as the first step towards discussing the setup of the all-party government that will be formed after the resignation of the current Prime Minister and Cabinet. The President has invited all party leaders currently representing the ruling party in Parliament as well as the independent group for the discussions that is scheduled to take place at 10:30 am on Friday. Meanwhile, the leaders of the independent MPs group in the government have decided to commence discussions with all political parties on the proposal to form an all-party interim government. In the meantime, after his comments yesterday expressing his unwillingness to resign from his position, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa now says that he is ready to resign only if a suitable person is nominated to replace him. This was communicated by Venerable Professor Omalpe Sobitatera after meeting the Prime Minister at Temple Trees last afternoon for discussions on the letter issued by the chief prelates. In addition, at a meeting with Pradesha Sabha chairpersons, mayors and district leaders today, the Premier also denied claims that he was asked to resign by the President. He added that he was also confident that the President would not do so as well.
The Kegalle Magistrates Court today ordered the Inspector General of Police to arrest all those who were involved in ordering and carrying out the shooting of protesters at the recent unrest in Rambukkana that led to the death of one individual. The order was given when the case was taken up before the Kegalle Magistrates Court for the fourth day today.
The case filed at the Kegalle Magistrates Court with regards to the death of one person when police opened fire at protesters on the 19th in Rambukkana was taken up before Magistrate Vasana Navaratna for the fourth day today. Announcing the details of the inquest into the death of the victim Chaminda Lakshan, Kegalle Magistrate Vasana Navaratna announced that the judicial medical officer had confirmed that his cause of death was by hemorrhage due to serious damage to multiple organs caused by a bullet. Accordingly, the magistrate then ordered the Inspector General of Police to arrest all police personnel involved in ordering and carrying out the shooting, to name them as suspects and produce them in court immediately. President's counsel Rienzi Arsakularatne, appearing for the aggrieved party, told the court that during the unrest in the Rambukana area, the former OIC of the Rambukana police, KC Herath, had met with a prominent politician from the area and called for an investigation to be carried out to determine whether there was a political connection behind the incident. He also called for a report to be presented on all telephone calls made by the SSP for the Kegalle district on the day in question as well. In response, the magistrate directed the Criminal Investigations Department to call for a tower report from the relevant mobile service provider, detailing the telephone records of the police officer who ordered the shooting. Following this, President's counsel Upul Jayasuriya, also appearing for the aggrieved parties, urged the court to call for a report from the Kegalle General Hospital, detailing the total number of civilians who suffered gunshot injuries during the unrest. An order was then issued to the director of the Kegalle General Hospital in this regard. Meanwhile, the magistrate chided the police today for having released one of the fuel bowsers from court custody to its owners, despite their claims that the bowsers were the reason for the decision to open fire on unarmed protesters. The CID revealed that one of the two bowsers had already been released to the owner of a filling station in the Mirigama area. President's counsel Sarat Jayamana inquired from the police as to how the same bowser that had been parked on the railway track was handed over without court permission. This prompted the magistrate to ask the investigators to explain by whose orders the bowser was released back to its owner. To this, the owner of the bowser, who appeared in court through a lawyer, revealed that the Rambukana police had released the bowser to him. Expressing her strong displeasure over the action of the Rambukana police, the Kegalle magistrate directed the CID to immediately investigate the release of the bowser, a key item of evidence in the case, without the permission of the court. At the request of the CID, the magistrate also ordered the CID to present to court all unedited footage of the incident that were aired on all leading television news broadcasts in the country on the day of the incident. The case is set to be taken up again on Monday, the 2nd of May.
Sri Lanka received an emergency funding lifeline by the World Bank totaling $600 million. This was announced yesterday when World Bank officials in Sri Lanka met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Now, the first tranche of the $400 million is set to be released soon, World Bank Country Director Chio Khanda announced at the meeting.
The World Bank has agreed to provide the $600 million in financial assistance to help Sri Lanka address its current economic crisis, the President's media division says. World Bank country manager for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Chio Khanda, has announced that the first tranche of $400 million will be released shortly. Khanda's remarks came during a meeting between World Bank representatives and President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house in Colombo yesterday. This financial assistance will be provided to meet medicinal drugs and health needs, social security, agricultural and food security, and gas needs. The World Bank representatives also stated that they will continue to provide assistance to Sri Lanka in overcoming its current economic crisis. World Bank advisor in Sri Lanka, Husam Abu Daga, practice leader for human development Rene Solano, Finance Minister Ali Sabri, Trade and Samurdhi Development Minister Shayan Semasinghe, Secretary to the President Gamini Senrath, Finance Ministry Secretary KMM Sirivardhana, Labour Ministry Secretary Mapa Patirana, Deputy Secretary to the Treasury RMP Ratnayaka and the Director General of the National Planning Department RHW Kumarasiri were also present at the meeting.
The Gazette Extraordinary that was set to prevent people who have not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 from entering public places with effect from 30th April will not be implemented due to the prevailing situation in the country. A health ministry official said that due to the socio-economic situation has undergone many changes since the publication of the Gazette, it will not be implemented at present. He added that given the current situation, it would not be required that the Gazette could not be successfully implemented, especially in the midst of large crowds gathering across the country at protests. However, the implementation of the Gazette would be reconsidered after reviewing the situation in the future. Further, noting that vaccination cards would be required as proof when the decision is implemented, the ministry officials said that the introduction of digitalized proof was also considered, but the implementation of the system may take a bit more time. The Ampara magistrate ordered for the exhumation of the remains of all the Sainda Maruthu dead that was carried out today. The exhumation was conducted in order to try and determine once and for all whether the exclusive or rather elusive Sarah Jasmine was among the dead or if she is still on the loose in India, as some claims say. DNA samples were collected today and have been sent to the Government Analyst Department, where they will be compared with the samples from family members of Sarah Jasmine.
On the 26th of April, 5 days after the deadly Easter Sunday attacks, 3 explosions took place at a compound in the area of Saindamarudu in Ampara that resulted in the death of 17 people, including 6 children. The explosion happened when police special task force personnel descended upon the location after receiving a tip-off that a suspicious group were residing there. In the end, the deceased included the father of Easter attack ringleader Zaran Hashim, Mohammad Hashim, and Zaran's brother Rilwan Hashim. It was also suspected that Sarah Jasmine, alias Pulasini Mahendran, the spouse of Achi Muhammadu Hastun, who detonated his explosive pack at St. Sebastian's Shrine in Katuapitia, was also among the deceased. However, questions were later raised whether she was actually among the dead, as DNA samples taken at the site failed to match with samples of her mother. What's more, rumours also circulated that Sarah Jasmine fled to India with the assistance of a Sri Lankan police officer. Further, 2 persons then gave evidence before the Presidential Commission that probed the Easter Sunday attacks, claiming to have seen Sarah Jasmine 2 months after the Saindamarudu incident. However, recently Public Security Minister Prasanna Ranatunga told Parliament that the witnesses who claimed that they saw her alive after the incident are now missing. Under the circumstances, the courts have ordered the exhumation of the victims' remains from the Saindamarudu explosion for further DNA tests to prove conclusively whether Sarah Jasmine was among the deceased. This morning, the remains were exhumed in the presence of Ampara magistrate Lushaka Kumari Dharmakirti at the public cemetery in Ampara, after which samples were obtained for DNA testing. The samples were then sent to the Government Analyst Department.
Let's find out more on tomorrow's mass protest right after this break.
Big 3.
A large number of trade unions representing all state, semi-government and private sectors are expected to launch an island-wide strike for 24 hours tomorrow to express their dissatisfaction towards the government. However, health sector unions have decided to limit their strike to just 2 hours in order to continue medical services to the public. Meanwhile, bus trade unions in both the state and private sectors are set to refrain from striking, while the Railways Employees General Union are set to support the strike action tomorrow.
With island-wide demonstrations continuing to urge the President and the government to resign over their mismanagement of the economy, every day more factions seem to be joining in. Tomorrow, a single-day strike action is expected to be launched by trade unions affiliated to numerous sectors in the country. Trade unions attached to plantations, agriculture, fisheries, banks, health, ports and economic centres in all state, semi-government and private sectors are expected to participate tomorrow. Further, trade unions representing teachers and principals have also confirmed their support for tomorrow's action. According to the president of the Association of Health Professionals, Ravi Kumudesh, over 1,000 trade unions have pledged their support towards the strike action tomorrow. He added, however, that the strike by health professionals will be limited to 2 hours in order to minimize the inconvenience to the public arriving for treatment at hospitals. However, during remaining working hours, health sector employees are expected to express their objections by wearing black tomorrow during working hours. Kumudesh also revealed that the health trade unions are expecting to provide a boost to ongoing strikes on the 6th of May by calling on all health professionals to refrain from providing services at hospitals if the government fails to heed public opinion. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the All Ceylon General Port Employees Union says that 17 trade unions will refrain from reporting to work tomorrow and will be all reporting sick. Further, the All Island Economic Centre Collective, who have also extended their support for tomorrow's strike, will refrain from activities related to the distribution of vegetables at all economic centres island-wide. However, trade unions of the Sri Lanka Transport Board have not planned to support the mass strike after heeding a request by Transport Minister Deruma Manugama. Further, the minister also said that private bus trade unions as well as those in the Sri Lanka Railways will also refrain from supporting the strike action.
විශේෂයෙන්ම ලංගම සහ දුම්රිය වැනි දේවල් වලින් වර්ජනය කිරීම තුලින් විශාල ආදායම අහිමිවීමකුත් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. මේ ආදායම අහිමිවීම තුල ඒ අයටම වැටුප් ගෙවීම වගේ දේවල් වලට ප්‍රශ්න ඇතිවීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ඉදිරියේදී යම් සහන ප්‍රමාණයකුත් අපි පොදු ප්‍රවාහණයෙන් දෙන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
However, speaking at a media briefing this evening, the president of the Railway Employees General Union said that they will support the single-day strike tomorrow.
අද මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රියේ සිට හෙට මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රිය දක්වා පැය 24ක සංකේත වැඩ වර්ජනයක් කරනවා.
What's more, unions attached to the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines too have decided not to support the action tomorrow.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says that his party has closed its doors to any parliamentarian that stands with the Rajapaksa family. He made these comments during a protest march that commenced its second day from Mavanalla today.
Yesterday, the country's main opposition Samagi Janabalawegaya commenced a protest march from Kandy, calling on the government and president to resign. The march concluded at Kadugannava yesterday. Today, the march recommenced from Mavanalla in the Kegalle district. During the march, the most notable aspect was the usage of an effigy of a crow by the SJB to ridicule the government.
Sajith Premadasage දීල්ලත ආණ්ඩුව ඇතුලේ තියෙන අර්බුදය කොටසක් ජනාධිපතිට යන්න කියනවා අනිත් අය කියනවා අගමැති යන්න කියලා මේ හොර වංචනික ඇඳවීමට අපි දායක නොවෙනකොට හදනවා අපිටත් දීල් තියනවලු ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ ගෙදර යන්න මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ ගෙදර යන්න ගාලු මෝදරේ ඒ ජනතාවත් එක්ක හිට ගන්නවද එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ රට කාපු හොර හැත්තත් එක්ක හිට ගන්නවද කියන තීන්දුව മന്ത്രിවරු ගන්න ඕන හැබැයි එකක් මම කියන්න කැමතියි මේ හොර හැත්තත් එක්ක වාඩි වෙන කිසිම පුද්ගලයෙකුට සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ සලුන්දර විවෘත නැතයි කියන එක මේ අවස්ථාවේ මම කියනවා
ගමන බොහොම සාර්ථක ලෙස කන්ද උඩරට සිට අපි මාවැන්න නගරය දක්වා ගමන් කරන ලැබුවා.
Meanwhile, the march today concluded at Galigamua. Tomorrow, the march is expected to begin from Galigamua and will conclude at Danovita. On the 1st of May, the Samagi Janabalawegaya expects to conduct its May Day rally under the themes Struggle for Independence and May Rally of the Century.
Anti-government protests at Golface Green continued for a 19th day with active public participation demanding immediate change in the country's political structure. Along with protests at the Golface Green, demonstrations near temple trees continued calling for the immediate resignation of the Prime Minister.
The latest protest village that has gained as much attention as the original Gota Gogama site at Golface Green is the one set up near temple trees. Protesters, incensed by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's recent comments where he rejected any chances of resignation, went ahead with the setting up of the new village earlier this week. However, the Prime Minister's office at Temple Trees seems to have tried out a few new tricks to try and drown out the protesters' chants with chants of their own. With the aid of public address systems, the chanting of Pirit has been used to drown out the public voices. With that being the case, the public today protested near the US Embassy, urging the police to turn off the public address systems and remove all police vehicles parked along the pavements to obstruct their protest. Meanwhile, the protest site at Gota Gogama in Golface Green was filled with members of the public as usual. The Golface protest site is slowly nearing a month since its establishment on the 8th of April, with today being its 19th consecutive day. Further, this has also become the final location of most of the protest marches that have worked off around Colombo and its suburbs. Today, a group of Samurdhi employees arrived at the Gota Gugama protest site, echoing calls for the president and the government to resign. What's more, public signatures were collected at the protest site for a petition calling on authorities to audit the assets and liabilities of all political representatives. In the meantime, video footage on social media showed security at the presidential secretariat removing banners and placards placed by the protesters at the gate. The move, however, was met with a show of intense displeasure from the protesters. Tomorrow will be the 20th day of the anti-government protests, and more public groups are expected to arrive at the site to join the chorus of dissatisfaction against the government. In the meantime, several other demonstrations against the government were worked off in different areas of the island during the day as well.
The ambassador of the European Union in Sri Lanka, Denny Chaibi, today presented the official certificate of geographical identity certification for Ceylon Cinnamon to Export Development Board Chairman Suresh Dimel. Speaking at the ceremony, the EU ambassador likened Ceylon cinnamon to champagne as a niche product that now has the right backing to take on and grow export figures against its global competitors.
Sri Lanka received its first ever geographical indication certification earlier in February this year, when the European Union Commission granted GI status to Ceylon cinnamon. This was the outcome of a long and painstaking road led by the Sri Lanka Export Development Board and with the support of numerous public and private stakeholders. Meanwhile, at a ceremony today, the official handing over of the certificate was held at the BMICH, with Export Development Board Chairman Suresh Dimel accepting it from EU Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Denny Chaibi. Speaking afterwards, EDB Chairman Dimel pointed out that the certification will now prevent the unauthorized use of the Ceylon cinnamon tag and will go a long way in supporting not only the country's foreign reserves, but the hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans that contribute to growing cinnamon.
Geographical indication registration will differentiate Ceylon cinnamon in the EU market from the substitutes of lower quality. GI will give us a competitive advantage for market differentiation and a better value proposition for our product. GI prevents all third-party and unauthorized producers from using this indication Ceylon cinnamon in products that do not conform to the applicable standards. This competitive advantage in the EU market is a great opportunity for us to increase our exports and earn foreign exchange through the cinnamon value chain, while, most importantly, benefiting hundreds of thousands of livelihoods in rural communities around Sri Lanka that are involved in cinnamon production and processing.
Also addressing the event, EU Ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Denny Chaibi, likened Ceylon cinnamon to champagne, adding that the geographical indication certification will now allow Sri Lanka to take full advantage of the competitive advantage against the cheaper and lower quality cassia producers in the global market.
In times of crisis, it's important for us, at least here, to remind ourselves of the incredible potential of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a lot going for itself. It has all the fundamentals are right. It is a unique island, it has unique properties, and all been in airports, you've all seen in the duty-free the price of champagne and then the price of mousse, which is the same product made 200 kilometers down the road, but it's half the price. So obviously there's an issue of maximizing the profit and maximizing it here. But what is also very important is that a geographical indication preserves the product history and the people. So I just mentioned champagne, the Weissbier of Bavaria is also protected as a geographic indication, or Parmigiano. So for example, Parmigiano, it's about the people and it's about the history, and this has value. This has more value than you think. Parmigiano, the market for Parmigiano is 2.5 billion. It's 2.5 billion, why? Because there are only 350 establishments in Italy that can produce that, and the rest of the world wants that. And that's what we want to have for Sri Lanka, that a small number produce something that everyone in the world wants. At the moment, Sri Lanka exports for about $200 million of cinnamon. The overall market is 800 million, but it can grow many-fold. So the biggest exporter is Vietnam, and it exports cassia. And what we are doing here is to separate cinnamon from cassia, so that the premium that is paid in Mexico, in Peru, the biggest market, will also be paid in Europe. And therefore, the market can grow much more. So what we need is to give a much better branding for Sri Lanka. It shouldn't be about either tsunami or civil war or Easter bomb attacks. It has to be about fantastic product, the best cinnamon in the world, the best tambili in the world, the best pineapple in the world, and that's what we want to achieve with this geographic indication.
Now, after days of ending in negative territory, the Colombo Stock Exchange bounced back to recover into positive territory as the all-share price index gained 375.15 to end at 7,280. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks also saw a 230-point gain to end the day at 2,356.71. The share volume was 144 million, while market turnover was 21 billion rupees, up by 1.3 billion compared to yesterday's close. The transportation sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while banking sector was the second highest. Foreign sales accounted for 45 million rupees, while foreign purchases stood at 82 million rupees at the end of today's trade. Fitch rating agency Fitch Ratings has placed the national long-term ratings of 12 Sri Lankan non-bank financial institutions on rating watch negative. The entities that have received the negative rating watch are finance and leasing companies, Bimput Finance, CBC Finance, Central Finance Company, Fintrex Finance, H&B Finance, LB Finance, Mercantile Investments and Finance, People's Leasing and Finance, Sarvodaya Development Finance, Kegalle Finance, Siapatha Finance and securities firm Asia Securities. The rating watch negative reflects heightened downside risks to the institution's credit profiles amid increased economic and financial market volatility in Sri Lanka. Fitch said that this risk is exacerbated by the deteriorating sovereign credit profile and the ensuing risks to the stability of the financial system. The rating agency went on to say that it will review the national ratings of financial institutions, subsidiaries of Sri Lankan corporates that have not been included separately if needed. And that's all for tonight. Good night.